Welcome back to another episode of Fraud Intel series. I'm your host, Maxim Baldakov, head of Fraud and Financial Crime Solution covering Meta region. And today with us, we have Andrei Loshev, a team leader for the Fraud Analytics Group at Group IB. So, Andrew, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what does your team do?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Max, for inviting me today. And I'm working as a team lead of fraud analytics team related to development and research, focused on local research in the Middle East region specifically. Our team is working currently on really interesting Mule scoring assessment algorithm, and also we're probably launching soon machine learning biometrics algorithms trained on supervised and supervised data we have currently, and hope we can just continue our work and fight cybercrime in Group IB.
That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing. Andrew, I want to hear your story on how did you end up in the fraud prevention industry?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting, not like I can say standard way, because my first degree was related to neuropsychology, because I really enjoyed, kind of science like biology, chemistry, and something like that. And when you have your final project in university, you're supposed to do some statistical research. So I've collected some interesting data of sportsman group before tournament. So including some psychological test screening and just maybe some height, weight of sportsmen's, heart rate, blood pressure. And after that, just collected the results and then found to apply just simple regression model, and just was really excited to get accuracy more than 80% for my research, that I could predict results of another unseen testing group. So, I felt power of the data, that I can predict the future, can I predict stocks and bearish, and stuff like that. So I decided to apply my next degree, already related to information technology and computer science, and got an invitation from one university in New Zealand. So it was really interesting experience to work and study, in a multicultural, really diverse society. So after that, during my study, everything app development, gaming development, VR development. And of course, I worked on data science and machine intelligence projects. And after completing my graduation in New Zealand, I strongly decided to be some maybe data scientist or analyst, just basically to work in data space. Mm-hmm. But faced with, typical problem, all fresh graduated people have. It's not a lot of experience, not enough to apply, especially in such competitive, space like data science and data analytics. So I just made really, I can say, one of my most emotional and random decision in my life. Just I was really frustrated that I can find any good position. So I just, made kind of simple search, internship, United States, information technology, and just applied on kind of first website. And after that, now I got an invitation. So probably you will agree with me, that United States experience probably is the best for young specialists to try this kind of IT startup environment. And so I got an invitation from a company in New York, OneCube. They were working about some kind of advertisement, digital advertisement industry. But firstly, I just work on some NLP projects, some kind of simple data analysis, not related to fraud prevention or anything like that. But then, I know they had some kind of shared, office space, we have you see in some American movies, and just another company. I joined that office space where I was an intern, and we had some discussions. They just approached me and just asked if I would like to join us as an internship for 1 year. And this company was named Cubient. They were designing real-time ad fraud prevention, in advertisement fraud industry. So it was really cool just to try it out. And basically, after completing the internship, they just offered me a junior data scientist position. Mm-hmm. And I can say it's where my career path started in fraud prevention industry. I just really got interesting experience. So I just built kind of specific mindset, skill set, tool set needed for fraud prevention. And about 2 years ago, got interesting and amazing opportunity to join Group IB and already to work on in financial and banking fraud, which I was really interested to try.
In fraud prevention, not in fraud. Yeah, just a small correction here.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's very interesting. So I agree. Like at that age, you make a lot of emotional decisions that can later on shape your whole career in the future. I get what you're saying. Talking about advertisement fraud and banking fraud, right? So do you see any similarities between those two different domains, or these are completely different environment, completely different field when it comes to fraud prevention in advertisement or fraud prevention in banking and financial sector?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And first things I have in mind, it's like clear difference between who they target, these two types of fraud. For ad fraud, it's advertisers, companies, corporation who are trying to buy some, traffic, buy some user impressions, clicks, just to advertise some products because they would like to attract new customers. But, like in banking and financial fraud, it's like pretty clear that here the main target is financial institutions, and most importantly for me, it's like real customers, real individuals. So here the fraud is like about like stealing money, doing a counter recovery, or like transfer money through Mule networks or payment system abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So this I think like main differences for me. And what about like common? I can say still a lot of kind of similar techniques fraudsters use like in both sectors. Like they're designing some, using automation tools to design some different bots to create kind of synthetic identities, especially now with using AI. So, and for us as the defenders, we can detect such anomalies, abnormalities in the data to detect such patterns. So I can say, like from my experience, what kind of techniques I used in ad fraud, I really applied in banking fraud as well, and they really work. So I think, and yeah, if we can say it's like kind of common some things. And also, I think one interesting like differences between these two type of frauds. In ad fraud, legal framework is not so clearly defined. So for example, in financial banking fraud, it's clear like it's a real crime. So I know like in Group AB, a lot of investigations which led to like real arrests and prosecutions with criminals. In ad fraud, such success stories also happen, but rarely. So usually in ad fraud, this kind of attackers, they are like sometimes more aggressive.
Thank you for sharing, Andrea. I think that's pretty interesting what you're saying. Another distinguishing factor, in my personal opinion, that banking fraud prevention industry has is focus on mule accounts and mule account prevention. So I know your team is working really hard to detect mule accounts, prevent them at the onboarding stage. It's your day-to-day operations. But before we dive into the topic of mule accounts, could you please share a little bit with the audience what is a mule account in general and what role does it play when it comes to fraud operations?
I would start like basically from the word mule just came from animal word, and mules, kind of cute animals which were used for kind of transferring heavy load goods and some other stuff, sometimes even financial stuff like silver, gold. But basically they were transferring some stuff which not this stuff don't belong to them. So actually exactly the same thing I think in fraud. So Mule and Mule accounts, they try to transfer money, which of course they don't own, and they usually transfer some kind of thing related to criminal income, like from phishing attacks, scams, or like any other illegal source of money they have. It's like sometimes from bank perspective, it looks like just a normal account. Yeah, but based on transaction, based on how this account created, we can detect is it like normal behavior or it's like mule behavior. And of course for fraudsters, I think it's one of the crucial things to have such mule networks, because they can't just send money directly. They need to have some sophisticated money laundering network. So that's why they just hire, like sometimes it can be like individuals, as they know that they're like kind of part of the fraud, and they're having some fees, bonuses. Sometimes it can be a kind of victim scenario. Maybe people just became unwillingly mules. And sometimes it's just fraudsters, they're using like stolen identities. some kind of national IDs, like passport data, and just created as much as possible accounts to create a really large scaled Mule network.
Andrea, I think that's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing. Another distinguishing factor, in my opinion, that banking fraud prevention industry has is a focus on Mule accounts and Mule accounts detection and prevention. I know your team is personally, heavily involved in day-to-day operations when it comes to Mule detections. And talking about, in general, what is a Mule account? Could you please share with our audience the definition of a Mule account and what role does it play when it comes to fraud operations?
Yeah, basically you can say like a Mule account is this type of account which is used for disguise stolen funds or like funds or to transfer funds related to illegal income like phishing, scam attacks, or any other source of criminal income. So fraudsters are using this account as a middle layer just to have a complicated Mule network and money laundering schemes just to have to cover their trails because they can't send receive money directly. So I think it's the main purpose of Mule account.
I see. I think that's pretty clear. I think one of the reason why there is so much focus on Mule account detection and Mule account prevention is because it's a crucial piece of fraud operations, because without those accounts, pretty much you are unable to, cash out the stolen money, right? You can have multiple ways of how you can, do account takeover, do, social engineering attacks, phishing, and so on. But if you don't have Mule accounts, if you are unable to cash out the money that you have stolen, it's pretty much all become useless. So I think that's why there is so much focus when it comes to Mule account detection in the banking fraud prevention industry. And talking about again the history of Mule detections back in the day when I was a fraud analyst myself, I remember that back then fraudsters used some basic defense evasion techniques like IP spoofing through VPNs, open proxies, other tools, and so on. To create Mule accounts through digital onboarding, or to bypass various controls where you need to sign in from a foreign country and transfer funds to another account or cash them out. What happened after that? Because I heard that a lot of banks, a lot of financial institutions implemented multiple ways when it comes to IP analysis. So VPNs, open proxies is no longer a silver bullet to bypass different controls implemented by the banks.
Yeah, totally. Like as we discussed before, like when Group IB just started operating, especially in the Middle East, we started kind of arm race. So now fraudsters are using more sophisticated techniques. So now they're abusing roaming mode for SIM cards. So usually, basically, they purchase even physical SIM cards or maybe a eSIM, I think in most cases, and try to mask the IP address, using roaming. In Middle East, usually, like the IP address, public IP address, will be the same as your country issued SIM card. So if you issue in one country, so it will be the same IP we will see in Group IB and in banking systems as well. So for most of the defensive system, it looks like just normal IP address from this trusted region or trusted country.
That's pretty cool. So you can mask, your IP just by shipping a SIM card, a physical SIM card abroad, and the traffic, as you correctly said, right, will be completely normal from the perspective of the financial institution, just from the IP address analysis alone. Now, in cybersecurity, there is this very well-known concept of tracking certain threat actor groups, right? In cyber fraud, in your case, do you do something similar when it comes to groups related to Mule accounts or related to, fraudsters accounts that use this particular technique, SIM card in the roaming mode?
Yeah, of course, because for us it's important to detect and uncover the whole Mule network. And here in Middle East, I think the largest group which are abusing this kind of methods are really located in Syria, because on first kind of stage of their evolution, they used SIM cards and eSIMs in roaming mode, but they were accessing from their real geocaches. And we found this group particularly located in Syria. But now they just got smarter. Now they're using also GPS spoofing to hide their real GPS location. So usually they spoof the trusted country as their target. And now as they're using also Starlink connections. So basically now they can just, simulate like any location, like any IP address to be like legitimate user for European Union or for any Middle Eastern country. And this group is like really, really scaled, and seems this Mule network they're having really important for them. So they're trying really hard to bypass kind of defensive solutions to constantly evolve. So it's also for us, it's important to be kind of step ahead, just to predict the next steps. Yeah, definitely. We're tracking such threat groups, and the largest group in the Middle East related to Mule activity located in Syria. They're using this kind of advanced method to IP mask using like roaming modes and eSIMs. Also, they're using GPS spoofing to hide their real, locations and geohashes. But based on our additional like research and analysis, we found that the geohashes are located in really high-risk regions, and probably the activity related possibly to financing extremist group in the region. So here it's not longer the fraud, but also I think it touches the national security of Middle East region.
I see. So you are mentioning a multitude of different defense evasion techniques here, right? As you correctly said, threat actor group is very advanced. They're using both GPS spoofing, SIM card roaming, IP masking technique, some other tools. And you mentioned a very important point that based on your latest research and analysis, you link this particular threat actor group to financing of the extremist group. How do you do that? How do you find that link?
Yeah, like even now, of course, like on the later stages, they use really advanced techniques. Now even they're using Starlink to connect and IP mask to have as a European IP address. But on early stages, they were not so accurate. So they use their real locations. So we could really track them like every day, like to understand how they move, how they operate. And we could say the most, occurring geohash, the most kind of hit zone, of the activity located in Raqqa, Syria. It's important to remember that actually back in the years, Raqqa was the capital of ISIS. So of course now ISIS doesn't control this territory, but still maybe some kind of financial networks still exist in the region, and Khalilak is still active because we see really, they have a budget, they have a strategy, they're really centralized, they have long-term plans to keep doing these things and these Mule networks, and we see transferring large amount of money for these accounts.
I think it's very important what you said, because it shows how important this overall effort to detect and prevent Mule accounts, not just from the perspective of a banking industry, but from the perspective, as you said, of national and regional security. I think that's very important. I think what you said here is very important because it shows how critical it is for the banking industry to focus on Mule accounts and Mule accounts prevention. Because again, it highlights that this overall effort is not just about safety of the banking industry, it's about the safety of the region. It's about, national security, so to speak. And one of the first things that comes to my mind when we are thinking about industry response and how banks can protect themselves against such threat actors groups that use GPS spoofing, eSIM roaming, and so on, is by detecting the tools and tracking the tools that these fraudsters, that these Mule accounts operators are using. So particularly, if you're, you should be able to detect GPS spoofing on the mobile application. You should be able to detect roaming, SIM card in a roaming mode, and so on. From your perspective, right? Would that be enough? Would that be enough to protect the bank, or fraudsters would find a way eventually to even bypass these controls?
Of course, this kind of methods can detect large amount of accounts, especially new created, because we are focusing to detect such kind of patterns on early stage, on onboarding, or maybe first logins. But now they're using, of course, they have another schemes as well. So they use multilayered approach. So sometimes they approach some people in social media just to rent some account or buy some account or to create, to hire, like residents and nationals of some particular country.
Mm-hmm.
So from bank perspective, it looks like absolutely normal demise, because in this case, it's like no GPS spoofing detected, no any kind of roaming, VPN or other stuff. So they kind of, it building trust for the system. So user usually does do like anything suspicious, no any transfer, but then they just share or sell their credentials, we can say, to a second layer of Mule network.
Okay.
And after that, it's already kind of suspicious stuff started, like installation of cloning software, spoofing software, transferring large amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's like, from our perspective, we can detect this, because in this case, we can detect new device and new location.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, mostly for the bank, it seems like maybe some travel pattern or maybe a new device. But for us, it's clear when we have such different behavior that is something suspicious and we should stop and block this account. Another scheme we just recently saw and we were able to detect, it's when they even ship, devices across borders. So it was kind of bunch of cheapest, Android devices purchased.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did, they just basically opened account as much as possible in every bank in the country, and they just physically ship, their devices to another country.
So just to correct here, they shipped those devices to avoid detection of a new device, right?
Yes, to avoid this kind of device fingerprinting detection. And of course, here, like especially Middle East, user can travel pretty frequently. So for bank and for some defensive systems, looks like it's just normal travel pattern. But how we can detect this? We have biometrics related to different, AI or ML approach, and we observed that we could say behavioral profile started to being totally different, like swipe behavior, different. We can say activity hours of the user, and all this suspicious transfer started, kind of ATM cash withdrawals. And when we just reported this kind of suspicious pattern to the bank, they confirmed, really it's like money laundering is happening currently. And they even were able, it's also important to do collaboration between our clients. They were able to contact the user, and they just gave me feedback that actually as a voice and the person is totally different.
I see.
But we see that it's kind of controlled by the same user.
Yeah, same device.
Yeah, same device.
I see.
Yeah, but actually, it was this kind of interesting type of how they can create this interesting Mule networks right now.
That's pretty cool, Andrew. I never thought that behavioral biometrics can be used to track Mule accounts. Again, right, with my previous experience, we mostly were using it to detect account takeover, right? But what you're saying here is, again, really impressive. Shows how you can apply that same behavioral biometrics technology to detect changes in the customer behavior and detect Mule accounts cases like this. I think that it's pretty cool that you guys managed to catch these Mule accounts operators by detecting various deviations in their behavior. I think that's very impressive. Back when I was working as a fraud analyst, mostly I was using that technology to detect account takeover. So it's pretty cool that you managed to utilize a similar approach, but for a different fraud case. In your description, you mentioned that majority of these operations were conducted, or pretty much all of the operations were conducted by the fraudsters or Mule operators, right? So basically, one group of fraudsters would create Mule accounts, ship physical devices abroad, and then another group of fraudsters would start using such devices. In your experience, have you ever noticed or have you ever seen cases where the victims were involved in this money muling activity without their notice, without their consent, and basically facilitating fraudulent operations?
Unfortunately, yes, it's also happening. And it's important for our listeners to always stay aware about any suspicious offers, about transfer some money or kind of participate in some kind of interesting investment opportunities. Because now in Middle East, they approach people in social media. Sometimes to participate, to start investing in some kind of company. Or sometimes one of the recent case, the victim just received the money and then got a call. Of course, it was kind of imposter, not a real bank representative, but the person thought, oh, it's was a error, sent by mistake, and you just sent a refund. Otherwise, you will have a consequences, and they just provide the details. So, and just victim, I was thinking that it's something normal, some kind of maybe mistake in the bank, but actually, unwillingly, he became a Mule, and transferred some money. And I think our listeners and basically should be always aware of such kind of schemes to be always accurate with such kind of suspicious activities. It's better to contact the bank and to do any actions by their own, because it can be huge consequences for this person, because unwillingly, but he became to be part of the illegal activity. So unfortunately, such schemes are pretty common right now in the Middle East.
I think it's one of the latest stage of the development, right? When the fraudsters are unable to operate accounts on their own because bright people, smart people like you are able to track them through various characteristics, devices, behavioral profiles. So what I think it will end up with cases that you have mentioned, where victims will be unwillingly or without notice that this particular transaction is fraudulent, will be transferring money to another Mule. Thank you for sharing, Andrew. Andrew, thank you for sharing. I think that's very important for our listeners to be aware of such scheme where you can accidentally become a part in this fraud transfer chain. So our listeners should be cautious about this. Thank you for sharing. And I think we are almost concluding our episode. I know that podcast recording is not something that you do on a daily basis. How do you feel about this experience in general? Did you enjoy it? Or
Actually, thank you, Max, for invitation just to participate. Because it's first experience in my life to do podcast. But personally, I really listen to.
Doesn't look like it. It looks like you already previously recorded a couple of episodes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because previously, personally, I really like to watch podcasts about different kind of topics, science, history, cinema, video games, conspiracy theories. Especially before going to sleep, sometimes it helps. So if someone of our listeners will have really nice deep sleep while listening today our episode, it's positive outcome as well. Because now it's pretty stressful times. Sometimes it helps just to listen some really nice stories.
I agree.
So thank you very much again for the invitation today, Max. It was really a great pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, Andrew, for coming, and I hope we'll see you again on Fraud and Tell series. And that was another episode. Thank you for listening, and till next episode. Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. Stay healthy, stay safe.